Welcome to Global Voices, the official podcast of the Center for Socially Engaged Theatre at the University of Regina.
I want to go back to the idea of cultural intermediaries, because I think that's also very critical. Without giving too much away, tell us, what's your PhD about?
My PhD is really, in a nutshell, it's business professionalization in the performing arts. I'm quite interested in that. But I'm looking at it through the work of four very dynamic women who I'm describing as cultural intermediaries in four different countries in Africa. So it's Nigeria, the Gambia, Senegal, and South Africa. And I'm quite interested because sometimes women's voices are suppressed in Africa, and I found that when I was doing my research, my early research to write my PhD proposal, that I wasn't finding a lot of work written about women, or it's sort of suppressed as a secondary level of spotlighting. So I thought it'd be quite interesting to see and talk about what they do and how they hold space, how they train, how they connect. They're connectors, they're trainers, they're educators, they hold connectivity between the contemporary and the traditional space. Well, what I mean is they respect the traditional space. All the people that I'm talking about, they're very much about understanding the value of the arts that have come from the traditional space in the countries that they reside in. And I think it's important that we don't want to leave our traditional behind. We don't want to leave the traditional behind in favouring that the contemporary is better. The two need each other. And it's important that we constantly reference the traditional within the contemporary space.
Well, because this is also part of publication for you, right? This is, we're constantly evolving and hopefully thinking beyond just the academic paper. So I'm hoping that your committee and your university can also see this as part of your publication for your PhD. When you say cultural intermediary, what are the key ideas you want to pass across?
I want to pass across that sometimes people aren't connected to an institution. They're individuals that what I say hold space. They hold space. They are respected by their communities. They're respected by other cultural intermediaries in other spaces beyond their space. So if they're in the arts, they may be respected by people in health. They might be respected by people even in the sciences. But I think what I'm trying to pass across is there's lots of other ways to learn. There's lots of ways to see and appreciate leadership in the arts, because sometimes leadership in the arts is attached to they're linked to they're a professor at a university, or they're the artistic director of this festival, or the chief exec of this venue. And actually, there's lots of people, regardless whether they've got a paid position or not, will continue to do the work to uplift and advance certain aspects of the performing arts or the art sector.
Now, earlier on, before we started, we were talking about the history of cultural intermediaries and the fact that it has some background in marketing and things like that. But you're looking at it in a very distinct way. Did you want to speak to that? Because that would be considered as your contribution to knowledge.
Yeah, cultural intermediaries was a term that was coined by Pierre Bourdieu, and it was really a way to also recognize people that were outside of these kind of creative classes and recognize the value that they were bringing. And I think often you're right, they're used in the advertising space. Malcolm Gladwell refers to them as mavens, and I think that's also quite a nice approach. People who just create opportunities and search for opportunities for others, are constantly looking to make those connections. And yes, I'm looking at it in terms of the performing arts, and I don't believe that anyone's looked at it in that way. As I go along, I may find there's pockets of it that have been captured, but for now, most of the research is being done in advertising. I'm particularly interested in the performing arts because, particularly with the performing arts, it requires a body to move. You're moving actor, the dancer, the musician. And what happens in those spaces is there's less of their work circulating within the continent, within the rest of the global stages, because you require a plane ticket, a visa. And we know there's an enormous amount of barriers to that. So literature, a book, a digital piece of music, an art painting, a sculpture can move without the bodies. But what will happen if work really starts to circulate? Our African product, a performing art product, circulates with, starts to really circulate. What that's going to disrupt a lot, because you're actually moving people around, you're having conversations, who are connecting beyond the performances. They're having conversations, they're seeing things. It's going to affect how they make things. It's going to affect how they view the world, because you can view the world from your corner. So it's just like coming here. I just couldn't get this vision out of my head. I just kept having this vision of wheat fields and now I'm here. It's completely disrupted my thinking. It's got me thinking about, gosh, what ways can we really engage with Regina? So I think it's important that people travel, people smell the air, people connect with people see things that are surprising, because that also leads to strengthening the imagination.
I'm going to take you on that. We're looking for ways to animate Saskatchewan. It's really critical. We're going to come back to that, of course, post conversation here. Yesterday, you gave your talk, and something that you said that was very powerful. Of course, so many things that you said, but in connection to your research is around how do you professionalize the ambiguous,
Ambiguous.
that the work of these cultural intermediaries in the context that you're looking at them, because I'm also aware, because I also work in that space, that the research around many research around cultural intermediaries that have popped up all over the place now, which is great. We need all of them, but particularly for you, you're really interested in how do we professionalize. In addition to all that you've said, how do we professionalize the ambiguous? Can you speak more to that?
I think it comes from a number of spaces, and I'm sure you relate to this in the way that you operate, Taiwo. And I know that absolutely in the way that I operate, and Owen operates, and a number of people in our PACE family and our PACE fans, supporters. The ambiguous, for me, I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and I've been thinking about it in terms of invisible labour, or what is sometimes described as cognitive labour, the labour you do that does not often get given any credit. Housewives talk about it a lot. I am actually working. It is a full-time job, looking after family and children and keeping the house going. It's full-time. And but I find that with marginalised groups and people who are often marginalised or minoritized, and people who are in art forms that are still fairly new or growing, I find that they do a lot of heavy lifting before you even begin to see it. What the rest of the centre, if you like, begins to see it. Mm-hmm. What do I mean by that? When do the mainstream organisations take note? By the time they take note, they'll even sometimes describe you as popping up.
That's right.
Most people don't just pop up out of nowhere. They've been doing the work. It's only now that it's been brought to your attention. So I think there's something about the work that happens behind the scenes for a long time. Before you even get to the backstage, there's a whole bunch of work going on. And I'm quite interested in how do you remunerate that or reward it in some way? Because there's a lot of work. And the people who work in the arts recognise that when they're having conversations with organisations that may want to collaborate with them, they can spend months, even years, working to develop an idea for a funding application or for collaboration that you don't get paid. Now, shortly before lockdown, I started working with somebody in the prison system who wanted, it was prison system in England, who wanted to use theoretical techniques to kind of intervene with some of the practices that were happening in the prison that they weren't too happy about. So they were talking to myself and a theatre maker, Hassan Hamdali, in the UK, to come up with some ideas to shape this. And every time we met with her, she paid us. which we found quite slightly amusing because we were so not used to getting paid. But she said, no, every time I'm picking your brain and you're shaping anything, can you please send me a bill? And it's happened one or two times in the arts, but the whole time I've been working in the arts, I've not come across that. And I think this really needs, we need to really be quite strict with ourselves in the arts and really challenge that, because that's part of the ambiguity.
That's right.
The conversations that people have at a dinner party, or they make a phone call to help massage the way through for people that they know are going to have a hard time. It's all of those things.
It's interesting, and I think that part of that uniqueness of your study, your doctoral program, I do hope that 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 this come through as you continue to work on that, is that you're thinking about the idea of labor and production and how that comes into play in professionalization within the context of those in the margin. I can't tell you how many hours I spent on Zoom, on WhatsApp, talking to somebody. Well, do it this way. Let's do it this way. No, hold on. Well, send it to me. Let me read it. Oh, do you know this person in South Africa? I'm going to connect it to that. Do you know this person in Brazil? Wait a minute, let me do the connection. And I imagine many people that are doing way more than that than even me. And it's like, I'm busy, I'm working. But this is not even the work that gives you the money, that puts the money on your table, that puts the food on your table. This is like, it's like side hustle. But it's a way to know that I have to meet with that person to talk together about their work. Or another person has to do that to me. And then they're like, oh, thank you. And I'm like, well, thank you, because somebody did it for me, so I have to pass it on, right? So I think you're trying to capture something quite interesting, quite really, really interesting here. That I really look forward to what comes out of your PhD when you're done. Thanks for sharing all of that.
Thank you.
Yes.
To wrap up this, this, and speaking of invisible labor, shout out to Gabriel Friday. He's the one behind the camera. Of course, my grad student, and I've told him all of these things that he's doing also constitute part of his own portfolio as a creative person, right? Because it's a lot of work to edit, to set the camera, to put, to ensure that we get everything captured. That's really important. We have all of that conversation. And even the idea, in my own research team at the center, well, okay, when you conceptualize, how do you conceptualize? You may not be the one that is going to be in front of the camera, but the idea of conceptualizing, bringing things together and all of that, it's a lot of work. Many times, people that are behind the scene, we don't see them. And most of the time, when it's not seen, when it's invisible, in this part of the world, doesn't seem like it does count. So I think that you're onto something here, connecting. I know you will connect the dots, and we're connecting the dots here and there. But I think that your research is really touched a lot of opportunity here. My last question here. I don't know if you have any question for me, but my last question here is what are the things that are coming up in pace as you come to the middle of the year and come next year, 2025, and even 2026?
Wow, yes, good question. We are working as a UK partner with Business and Arts South Africa and the British Council, and it's the Sub-Saharan British Council team. And we've got an upcoming So Creative Summit in Joburg, the 9th and the 10th of May. And then towards the end of the month, we're in partnership with Urban Flow in Brighton, and we're working with the Brighton Fringe and Brighton Pride to activate the space there. So we've got a number of workshops, and we've got a 2-day PACE showcase where we're showcasing artists based in the UK, but also a couple of Nigerian artists that are coming through, just happen to be coming through, and we've said let's kind of showcase your work to an audience in Brighton, which is about an hour outside of London. We've also got a PACE laboratory, which is a mixture of dramaturgy, a producer's lab, and then a lab where we're looking at the role of technicians, lighting designers, set designers, people that often get invisibilized but are very important to great production. So we've got that lab at the end of June, early July in Bloemfontein, and then from there we go on to Dugga, which is apparently a historical site very similar to Ephesus in Turkey. And they are using festival activities to kind of animate the space, to train the young people there. So PACE is coming in to do a number of workshops. And we're hoping that we could do something similar for you here in Regina.
Thank you so much. And there's so much that we're planning, of course, in Saskatchewan, in the prairies, and in Canada. And this, all of this speaks to some of the work that I've already been doing, leading at the center. So I'm really looking forward to what comes out of this. Do you have any question for me?
I think you came and you engaged with PACE online. You were part of our dramaturgy lab. You came in person last year. What's been highlights of PACE?
Thank you. Good question. And I said before that I actually sent my theater company, Theater Mission International. I came to PACE in 2020 with Charles at Tubibi.
That's right.
And they shut down and we had to transition to online. And that was really our first contact with PACE, where we came with a one person show. I think the highlight for me, the opportunity to, I'm a big fan of network and networks. And that's because the reach of your work is based on the reach of your network. And the opportunity to be able to meet people, hear what they're doing, conceptualize things together, dream together, that's one. But beyond the network, though, is this space that you particularly, because you created this before Owen joined you, and then both of you creating that together now, the space to humanize. And I've told you this several times. A lot of the time when you go to showcases, it's always the whole idea of, I want to get my show here. It's always this competition. I want to, I would need this person to get me. But when you get to that space, there is that, and maybe that speaks to your understanding of the culture, of what you're trying to go beyond the regular showcase, and then other things that happen, in terms of the dramaturgy lab, the producers lab, all of those activities really speak to that, wanting to create space for us to be human and then to build capacity. And I think that's really critical. And then the last thing I'll say is that you've got a lot of success story already. During my keynote, there's someone that attended that ended up reaching out to me that they wanted to do a PhD with me. You've connected, me to Kenneth Okoko, who I've heard about, and they've read about me, and they were able to meet, and then many other places, and then from there you have I think a maker in residency at Salzburg seminar, and I think for me it's working. It may be gradual, slow, but the opportunity to really see all of that at work is just a highlight for me. Something is happening here, and then you're just kind of, what you're doing pops up all over the place, and you're moving ideas, you're moving people, you're moving spaces, you're animating spaces that are sort of like in between or even forgotten, and then you just be able to bring that to life. And for me personally, now I have a strong connection at FU, University of Free State, right? Which I think that those are really highlights for me. To be honest, when I got that email from the person that sent it to me, that they saw my keynotes and they wanted to work with me, I'm like, that's fascinating. Now, it's not like I don't get that all the time. I do get that. But the fact that, who would have thought it would be Bloemfontein? Does that make sense? Because it's not in Joburg. It's not in Cape Town. I mean, after Bloemfontein, I had to go to Joburg and I, saw other things. But Bloemfontein, really? Seriously? And then the last thing I would say is that, which goes back to the humanness, is that you also have a way, and your team have a way of connecting. You speak of mentorship and mentoring and finding how can we synergize, and I'm not going to mention different names here, but you've been able to connect people together in that way that they end up becoming bodies, working together or being able to work together for a while. or they say, wow, I really thank you for connecting me to this person. I learned A, B, C, D, and it's vice versa. And I think that for me, those are the really highlights. Because at the end of the day, even though there is the business or in the arts and all that we're doing, what sustains what you're doing is the humanness of it, the humanizing of it. And I think that you put the soul back into that. For me, that's the soul of everything. And I think that, so really thank you to you and Owen and your entire team for doing that. And of course, you have a lot of partners and all that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we'll bring it to a close today on this episode rather of our local voices. Thank you for listening. You can get all of our information at cset.ca. And please visit our website and of course all our social media outlets, YouTube, Spotify, and all of that. And thanks also to the University of Regina and to the Faculty of Media and Performance for their support. And of course to the Government of Canada in support of my Canada research here and my center and all of my work across the world here in Canada and beyond. Thank you so much. This is Taiwo Afolabi signing out. Bye.
You have been listening to Global Voices, the official podcast of the Center for Socially Engaged Theatre at the University of Regina. For more details about the center, visit www.cset.ca.